The leaves were falling from the great oak at the meadow's edge. They were falling from all the trees. One branch of the oak reached high above the others and stretched out far over the meadow. Two leaves clung to its very tip. "It isn't the way it used to be," said one leaf to the other. "No," the other leaf answered. "So many of us have fallen off tonight, we are almost the only ones left on our branch." "You never know who is going to go next," said the first leaf. "Even when it was warm and the sun shone, a storm or a cloudburst would come sometimes, and many leaves were torn off, though they were still young. You never know who is going to go next." "The sun seldom shines now," sighed the second leaf, "and when it does, it gives no warmth. We must have warmth again." "Can it be true," said the first leaf, "can it really be true that others come to take our places when we are gone, and after them still others and more and more?" "It is really true," whispered the second leaf. "We can't even begin to imagine it. It is beyond our powers." "It makes me very sad," said the first leaf. They were silent a while. Then the first leaf said quietly to herself, "Why must we fall?" The second leaf asked, "What happens to us when we have fallen?" "We sink down, down." "What is under us?" The first leaf answered, "I don't know. Some say one thing, some another, but nobody knows." The second leaf asked, "Do you feel anything? Do we know anything about ourselves when we are down there?" The first leaf answered, "Who knows? Not one of all those down there has ever come back to tell us about it." They were silent again. Then the first leaf said tenderly to the other, "Don't worry so much about it. You're trembling." "Oh, that's nothing," the second leaf answered. "I tremble at the least thing now. I don't feel so sure of my hold as I used to." "Let's not talk any more about such things." "No, we'll let be. But what else shall we talk about?" She was silent, and after a while she said, "Which one of us will go first?" "There's still plenty of time to worry about that," the other leaf assured her. "Let's remember how beautiful it was, how wonderful when the sun came out and shone so warmly that we thought we would burst with life. Do you remember? And the morning dew and the mild and splendid nights." "Now the nights are dreadful," the second leaf complained, "and there is no end to them." "We shouldn't complain," said the first leaf gently. "We've outlived many, many others." "Have I changed much?" asked the second leaf shyly but determinedly. "Not in the least," the first leaf assured her. "You only think so because I've gotten to be so yellow and ugly. But it's different in your case." "You're fooling me," the second leaf said. "No, really," the first leaf exclaimed eagerly. "Believe me, you're as lovely as the day you were born. Here and there may be a little yellow spot, but it's hardly noticeable and only makes you handsomer. Believe me." "Thanks," whispered the second leaf, quite touched. "I don't believe you, not altogether, but I thank you because you're so kind. You've always been so kind to me. I'm just beginning to understand how kind you are." "Hush," said the other leaf, and kept silent herself, for she was too troubled now to talk. Then they were both silent. Hours passed. A moist wind blew cold and hostile through the treetops. "Ah, now," said the second leaf, "I—" Then her voice broke off. She was torn from her place and spun down. Winter had come. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. As an immediate background for our continuation of our series on community, there are two things that I'm reading. First, I like to feel strange life beating up against my life. I like to realize forms of life utterly unlike mine. When my own life feels small and I'm oppressed with it, I like to crush together and see it in a picture in an instant, a multitude of disconnected, unlike phases of human life. A medieval monk with his string of beads pacing the quiet orchard and looking up from the grass at his feet to the heavy fruit trees. Little Malay boys playing naked on a shining sea beach. A Hindu philosopher alone under his banyan tree, thinking, so that in the thought of God he may lose himself. A troop of bacchanalians dressed in white with crowns of vine leaves dancing along the Roman streets. A martyr on the night of his death looking through the narrow window to the sky and feeling that already he has the wings that shall bear him up. An Epicurean discoursing at a Roman bath to a knot of his disciples on the nature of happiness. A Kafir witch doctor seeking for herbs by moonlight, while from the huts on the hillside come the sounds of dogs barking and the voices of women and children. A mother giving bread and milk to her children in little wooden basins and singing the evening song. I like to see it all. I feel it run through me that life belongs to me. It makes my little life larger. It breaks down the narrow walls that shut me in. And the second is some statistics. (1953). This is about America. 1 out of every 4 families has mental illness. 1 murder every 72 minutes a day. Every hour, 15 crimes of violence. Every hour, 7 robberies and 26 cars stolen. 1 out of every 43 children has police records. 1 out of every 3 marriages end in divorce courts. We have been thinking together about community and the rough and rather gross, in the sense of elemental working definition that we've used, is that community is a sense of wholeness. It is the experience of inward togetherness. It is a sense of increasing fulfillment. We are the heirs of 2 very definite ideas that have influenced our thinking. They come down to us from a far-off past. The division by which they are known varies according to the scholar who is talking about them. But the basic ideas which have to do with our subject are these. The first, that the meaning of human life, the significance of human life at any particular moment can be found by a study, an examination of the human life itself, of the human events, the examination of the culture, the examination of the things which make up the life, that beyond the span of the individual life, beyond the context, really, of the particular life, there is no wisdom available to the mind for dealing with human life in terms of effective interpretation or in terms of social change. Now, this concept, then, when applied to community, locates all of the responsibility for the development of community within the context of human life itself, within the individual and within the society, that we cannot expect to find in any sense any information, insight, or judgment, for that matter, that bears upon human life outside of human life itself. So that to make human life good and whole and hale, to have community as an experience of balance and tranquility, all of the resources for this, all of the ideals for it are to be found within the warp and woof of the life of the individuals. Now this is very significant. It is one of the important heritages that has come down to us from the Greeks. But it is very interesting, isn't it, that very often both individuals and societies lift out of a particular set of ideas, those ideas that have immediate bearing or that have significance for the life, that those ideas that seem to be on the side of the way we are going, overlooking what may be also included in the ideas. I think of this in connection with what we have done with the Greeks in this regard, just in passing, the idea that human life is to be lived on a basis that is horizontal, that man has within his mind and within his emotions all that he needs in order to establish a just society or a decent order of life. And if he gives definitions to the goals, then these definitions are taken from the lateral experience which he has of life. Of course, this is not quite the Socratic position, but we have seized upon it as the most useful thing for the ends that we ourselves are seeking. I don't think perhaps if we did not have this, we would be so full of the glory and the excitement and the convenience that our technological society has provided. Now there's another idea, and that idea is that always the destiny of man and the meaning of human history are to be found beyond human history, beyond time, and beyond all that man experiences. The prophets of Israel express it. What they want to know is, what is it that God requires? Not what is it that is practical, not what is it that is feasible, but man is always relating, says the second position, to an order, to a law, to a God, who is in history, but is always transcending history. Now, this letter has also had a very profound influence on our minds and our thinking in two specific ways that I shall simply mention. The first, that we have a belief in a universal order, a belief in a universal order that involves all of nature, all of the external world. Now, this is a religious belief. And on the basis of that religious belief, the source of which is long since forgotten, but on the basis of that religious belief, man has gone out, taking his creative mind, brooding over the stubborn and unyielding and often impersonal aspects of the world of nature, until little by little, here and there, he has been able to discover principles, logic, order, so as to reduce nature increasingly to manageable units of implementation, control, and power. But back of all of his activity is a religious belief that the external world is a world of order, and that there is at work in the external world precisely what is at work in the mind of man. And if the rational principle in the mind of man makes contact with the rational principle in the external world, then these two meet. And in that meeting, there is creative synthesis and insight and wisdom and understanding. Despite the fact that the external world seems other than. Now, the second belief, which is a religious belief, which influences our thinking about all of our utopias, about our dreams of how society can be when society is at its best, is a belief in the infinite worth of human beings, which is a derivative from the religious notion that before God, the soul of man has a worth that is absolute. Now, given this, then there is derived from this religious insight, which often we have forgotten, a whole series of other kinds of worth, man's social worth and all kinds of worth. But back of it is this fundamentally religious belief that the soul of man is of infinite worth, of absolute worth before God. And we have therefore translated this in terms of the democratic dogma, in terms of concepts which have to do with the meaning of love, with the meaning of tenderness, with all kinds of social reforms, all kinds of political reforms, but always, soon or late, the individual who is being considered finds that he, as a person, takes his position as to what he is worth, on the same foundation as established in the religious concept of man's soul being of absolute, intrinsic worth before God. And much of the meaning of these statistics which I read at the beginning can be located in the fact that this sense of infinite worth is not merely disintegrating in our social forms, but what is even more deadly, how to say this, the individual himself more and more feels that he as an individual is of no account. There's a story that that is told by a professor at Union Theological Seminary, and it's worth repeating. A mother and her son, young son, and her daughter went to a restaurant. And the waitress came to the table, and the mother ordered, the daughter ordered, and then the waitress said, "And now, young man, what will you have?" And the mother said immediately, "Oh, I always order for him." And then the waitress said, "But, young man, what will you have?" And the daughter said, "When mother isn't here, I order for him." And the young man, and the waitress said, "Young man, what will you have?" And then with a beam he said, "A hamburger." And when he said that, she said, "And do you want onions and relish and mustard and the works?" And he said, "Onions, relish, mustard, the works." So she went back to give the order, and she gave the mother's order and the daughter's order, saving the last order for the boy. And as she exclaimed, "Hamburger and the works," the boy looked at his mother and he said, "Mother, she thinks I'm real." She thinks I'm real. What has happened? There is no community, no sense of the whole possible for a society in which the individual is seen by himself as being of no account. And the assessment of the personality cannot rest upon any external categories, as important as these are. It cannot rest upon any kind of social classification, as important as these are. It cannot rest upon any ecclesiastical classification, as significant as these may be. In the last analysis, a society that does not make provision for the individual to have room enough to feel and experience his own life as his. Whatever else it offers, it makes no difference. Now, it is true that again and again we are overwhelmed by our sense of insignificance because we are taken in by the lateral classification of society on the basis of which it seems many of our utopias are projected, but not the prophet. He said, "There shall come a time when the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and a little child will put his hand over the hole of an asp, and the asp will relax his self-regarding impulse and not sting the child." Why? Because there has been a rehabilitation of the economic order, as important as it is. Because suddenly there is health everywhere, as terribly important as this is. No, the prophet says, because the knowledge of God cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. That the little man, the big man, the man of no consequence, and the man who is prestige-bearing, the sick man, the diseased man, the well man, the little child, the old man, the farmer, the head of state, each, when stripped to that which is irreducible in himself, must feel that in his own right he is of absolute worth. Before the creator of existence. Any society built upon the ignoring of this important thing cannot abide. There shall come a time when this kind of knowledge of God will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And time is running out. Forgive us, our Father, for the halting limitations of our broken speech. The feeble stirring of the heart in response to so great a love. Forgive us, our Father. Walk beside us with the encouragement that only Thou canst give from Thy long experience with Thy children, that we shall find our way into the fulfillment without which we perish, we die. Our Father,